All right, guys. So we do have a little bit of a late night poll drop that just happened with Atlas Intel. Now we know Atlas Intel, when it comes to their popular vote, they were the most accurate in 2020. They were like zero point 0.2 off overall. They had Biden like winning by 4.71 by 4.5, something along those lines. So they were the number one in terms of that. Well, now they've got the swing state polls as well. And you can see Trump leading in 5 of them with Harris leading in 2. It is a little bit perplexing when you look at the actual numbers when it comes to this, and then also some of the Senate races are even more crazy. But I will be going through this and just talking about it. You do have North Carolina. I think many of us are surprised with Harris up by around 2.5 points in North Carolina. But even just comparing North Carolina to a state like Michigan, Trump up by 3.5 in Michigan, but down by 2.5 in North Carolina. Seems extremely unlikely to me. But, these are just the polls. And of course, it's going to ebb and flow. We're a little bit over a month away. These aren't going to be obviously completely accurate, but just based on what we've normally seen, North Carolina should be a little bit more right. Michigan should be a little bit more left, although there have been a number of good Michigan polls. There was another poll that came out from New York Times. Michigan had it tied between Trump and Harris, which is a win for Trump. Anytime you get a poll within a point in Michigan, or really any of the Rust Belt states, I would say it's probably a win for Trump. Georgia, it's got basically a tie, Trump up 0.5 point. Arizona, it has Trump up 1 point. Which kind of surprised me as well. I figured, Atlas Intel, they came up with a poll with just the overall popular vote being Trump like +2 or +3. I would have figured Arizona would have been more. But this is not an exact science, right? We know that Arizona, based off of the last 7 or 8 polls, is clearly a Trump lean. I think the Harris campaign knows it as well. You do have Nevada with, there's another one that's a bit surprising. Harris sitting around +3. Now, there have been a few more positive polls for Harris out of Nevada, although there was one big outlier that helped her average from Bloomberg, which I think is going to get the polls really wrong, especially underestimating Trump supporters. But Nevada, I think, still is around 50-50. Kind of some weird results with both Nevada and North Carolina. Not necessarily that she's leading them, but that it's around a 3-point lead. I really don't see that personally. I mean, if she's up like 1 or 0.5, I could understand it. But we are still over a month before the election. We don't really want to sit here and, it's, a 2.8, percent lead versus a 1%. It's not that huge of a difference. You do have Wisconsin, Trump up 1.5 points. Again, the big surprise here, out of all of these swing state polls, Trump has the biggest lead in Michigan, which you could argue based off of all the polling that we have, all the polling says he probably has the lowest percent chance to win Michigan out of any of these states, because the Pennsylvania polling, it's also got him up by 3 points in Pennsylvania, but around 3.5 in Michigan. Out of those 3 Rust Belt states, Michigan's been the hardest one in terms of the polls being the most liberal. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to happen like that on election night, but it is a little bit surprising to see North Carolina, Trump down 2.5, but leading in Michigan. Another thing that's maybe even more surprising out of this is some of these Senate polls. Now, before I get into these overall polls right here, I do want to say there's a significant overestimation when it comes to how these liberal senators are going to do. Like, I've seen polls that have Rogers down by 13 or 14 in Michigan. That's absurd. That's not going to happen. Carrie Lake down by 13 to 16 in Arizona. She's not going to lose by that much. I'm not saying she's a great candidate. I know a lot of people are pissed off right now that the Republicans went with her, but she's not going to lose by 16. Like some of those are ridiculous, but obviously Rogers being up by 6, that is a huge difference. I don't think he's going to lose by 13. I saw one poll that had him at 34%. I like, it's an overestimation of many of these liberal senators in the Rust Belt, but him being up by about 6, that's a big outlier. I mean, when you look at it now, who knows? I mean, we really don't know, but it seems like that's a bit of an outlier. Carrie Lake being down by 4, I don't think that's that crazy of an outlier. I know everyone says, well, Carrie Lake was losing by like 12. There was like 2 polls that had her down by like 12 and 16 or something. Every other poll has been within like 7. So, I mean, spare me on that. I don't think that's really an outlier. This is a very close race. Rosen only being up 1.5. I mean, it's obvious Atlas Intel really likes the Republican senators in terms of their chances. Wisconsin, 1.5 points there. Pennsylvania, 2 points. I've seen some good polls for McCormick, but then this past week I've seen a lot of bad polls for him as well. And then Robinson, I mean, with the CNN thing, just crippled his entire campaign. And that's a scary thing because that was something from 14 years ago, and we don't know if it's actually true or not. but it's interesting how they just distribute that. They smear him, and now he's guaranteed to lose by like 13 points. And that's a big, I mean, losing by 16, I think it's going to be closer than that. But that is when it does start to become a little bit of an issue for Trump, when it gets that bad. Now, I don't think it's going to impact it, but 16 is a big number. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but 16 is a big number. And that is pretty crazy considering this is a more pro-Republican poll when you look at the Senate races. I don't know another poll that has Rogers leading, let alone up by 5.5. Lake down by 4, that doesn't surprise me. But these races being close, you normally don't see them this close either. So that's not a great number, but these are definitely different numbers than what we've seen. And Atlas Intel, I mean, they've been accurate in terms of the popular vote. People will kind of regard them, I guess, as more conservative. It's like, dude, any poll that doesn't have liberals up by like 5 points, I feel like is deemed conservative now. It's amazing how it works. It's like any of the accurate polls are conservative. And that's really how it is if you look at the average in terms of how they've graded, at least in the Trump era, I'm saying, in 2016 and 2020, just because of how badly ABC News and Quinnipiac and New York Times and YouGov, how bad all of these pollsters have polled Trump and his supporters. But yeah, here you can see the Atlas Intel polls. There was also other polls. This is the New York Times. And I was confused. I thought these had already been released, but apparently they hadn't been. So these are good numbers for Trump. I thought it was tied. They have Trump down by 1, but still within the margin. Those are good numbers out of Michigan. You'll take that, especially considering how Trump's been polling. It's got Rogers down by 5. Honestly, those are better numbers than I've seen with Rogers when it comes to the Senate race in Michigan. But I mean, the poll we just saw had Rogers up by 6, because I've never seen that anywhere. The 2nd district in Nebraska doesn't look great for Trump right now. It's got him down by 9. And then, so this is what people are talking about, and I agree. This is kind of the giveaway that this poll might be a little bit, the sample might be a little bit liberal. There's no way Trump is winning Ohio by 6 points. And the thing that you'll get when they drop all these swing states, you'll start seeing, like, if you see a Florida +3 and Ohio +6, I mean, there's just no way Ohio, after Trump won it by 8 points in 2016 and 2020, would be more liberal in 2024. And then it also has Brown up by 4 over Moreno. I'm on record saying I think Moreno for sure is going to win Ohio. Even if Trump wins Ohio by 6, it's not going to be that much of a difference to where Brown beats Moreno by 4, but Trump wins by 6. It's not going to happen. But there's no way Trump's winning by 6. That would be a 2-point decrease from what he wanted in 2020 in terms of that state. I think Trump wins Ohio by around 8.5 to 9. The polls in Ohio are crazy when you look at them where they are now versus where they were in 2020. It's like Trump performing 11 points better. So I think he wins by about 9 or 10. If that happens, there's no way Moreno is going to lose. But they keep doing this whole thing with Brown can hold it. He's the incumbent. I just don't think it's going to happen, especially with Trump there and the down ballot voting. Wisconsin, Harris +2. The Democrats, Baldwin up by 7. That's pretty normal what we've seen with Wisconsin. But yeah, I mean, I don't think those are that bad in terms of the polls there. But yeah, these new polls that we got, pretty surprising here. I mean, I guess we'll have to see how this develops. Harris up by 2.5 in Nevada and North Carolina. I mean, if you're Trump, you would take this. I mean, this is a Trump victory with like 290 electoral, or maybe even more than that, with a lot of electoral votes. But it's just the way it's done. If I were to predict this poll release, I would have said Trump probably up about 2.5 to 3 in North Carolina and possibly down a few points in Michigan, and it's the opposite. And then on top of that, in the same release, the Senate races, to me, in comparison to what we've seen, are very wonky. Now, again, a lot of these polls that have the liberals and all of these, swing state Senate races, the incumbent liberals, where they'll be up by like 14 or 15, that's an over-exaggeration. That's not going to happen. But these are also pretty crazy outliers when you look at this. So this is an interesting update, and I did want to share. I mean, this is good news for Trump. It is good news for Trump. It's just the way the polls have kind of split based on what we've seen recently. It is a little bit surprising in terms of that. But yeah, that's the late night polling update. Either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.